esteemed chief guest and my learned friend, C. K. Garu, my friend and the chairman of the session, Professor Vinod, and other esteemed faculty members, research scholars, friends, students. So at the outset, I profusely thank for giving me this honor to inaugurate this two-day national seminar. And I'm also happy to be here amidst all of you. Well, it's really foolish on my part if I talk about the constitutional position in relation to federalism. But before I get into the true dynamics of the way the federalism is practiced in the contemporary India and how the current political culture is trampling upon the federal character of Indian Constitution, to provide a context to what I really say. And let me recollect your attention to the fact that federalism forms part of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, and therefore it is an inalienable part of the Indian Constitution. As the Supreme Court said in the historic Keshavananda Bharati case, the basic structure of the Constitution cannot even be amended by the Parliament of the country. So the federalism has become the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, not without any reason. It is a part of the basic constitutional ethos. The three cardinal principles of India's constitutional thinking, equality, liberty, and fraternity, have a direct bearing to the federal character of Indian Constitution. In fact, at the National Law School, Vice Chancellor was talking about the very concept of nationalism and subnationalism in India. Well, I'm not getting into the political contours of the discussion on nationalism and subnationalism, but let me underline the fact that what is the idea of India? Well, for people like Amit Shah, idea of India is Hindi. But for me, idea of India is the 22 languages listed in the 8th schedule of the Constitution of India. So for some, the idea of India is the dominant religion. But for me, the idea of India is a multiplicity of religions. For some, the idea of India is eating only vegetarian food. Though I am a strict vegetarian, for me, idea of India is the choice and the freedom for the people to choose what they eat, what they think, what they profess, what they dress, and ultimately what they speak. So for the idea of India is the combination of multiple languages, cultures, ideas, thoughts, behavior, and the freedom of thought and action at the core of the idea of India. So therefore the federalism is a celebration of this great idea of India, because the idea of India is the diversity of India. The idea of India is an underlying unity in the diversity of India. Therefore, India's federal structure is not a fashionable ideology, but an integral to the project of building an Indian nation. A united, strong, and vibrant India is not possible without having federal character. But why did the Constitution not so explicitly talk about federalism? You are the students of law and you know very well that the Constitution of India has both the unitary and federal features. It's quite an elastic constitution. You can stretch in any direction. But the framers of the Constitution thought that the political culture of India will stretch the Constitution towards the federal character only. That's the reason India is a federal constitution, but we don't call India as a federation. We call it a union of India. But ultimately it has become not the union government. We are not talking about central government. That is the reason Tamil Nadu state government has issued instructions not to call it a central government, but call it only union government. Because there is a fundamental difference between a union government and a central government. The very word central government denotes centralization of tendency. A Muslim League member of the Constituent Assembly, I think Pocker Sahib, from Kerala warned in 1948, if now that we have freedom, I'm quoting what he said, now that we have a freedom, if we do away with the provincial autonomy and resort to a centralization, that will tantamount to totalitarianism. This was a caution given in 1948 by the member of the Constituent Assembly. And even Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has very eloquently said, India is a federal constitution in normal circumstances and a unitary constitution only in emergency circumstances. That's the reason, with reference to Article 356, when there was a sound demand in the Constituent Assembly to do away with Article 356, the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution of India, the father of Indian Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said, I hope it will be a dead article. This was what Ambedkar talked about, the Article 356. But yet the Constitution subtly included many unitary features given the context in which the Constitution was drafted. You are all aware that the Constitution was drafted when the nation was witnessing a bloody communal carnage. The Constitution was drafted when the vociferous tendencies were on rise, challenging the very unity of the country. The Constitution was drafted when nearly 500 principalities refused to accede to the Indian Union. That was the time when the Constitution was drafted. Any piece of literature will always reflect the spirit of the times. So there is nothing wrong in the founding fathers of the Constitution for including many unitary features in the Constitution, essentially because that was the time and that was the period and that was the thinking that dominated the founders of the Constitution. But the spirit of the Constitution, the soul of the Constitution, certainly relies on the federalism. With this introduction, let me now get into the straight to the dimensions, as you rightly put the topic of the seminar as the paradox of federalism and a threat to nation. What is the paradox of federalism? The Constitution clearly defines the executive, the legislature, powers of the center, of the union and the state governments. So in many constitutions of the world, the powers are not listed. Fortunately, we have in the Indian Constitution clearly demarcates and delineates the jurisdiction of the union government and the state government. Of course, unfortunately, there is a concurrent list. According to me, it shouldn't have been there. Well, that is the problem with the Indian Constitution, and as I already explained, so it was a context in which the Constitution was prepared. So, but now, the separation of power, the clear demarcation in the jurisdiction of the union government and the state government is not the mercy of anybody. It is the constitutional thinking. But what are we doing now? Agriculture is a state subject, but the parliament passes 3 farm laws without even any discussion. Our friend Dr. Keshwar is in Rajya Sabha, and we have seen how when Rajya Sabha member demanded for the division, that means in legislative language, division essentially means voting, they were expelled from the house and the bills were passed voice vote. So not just the manner in which these farm laws were enacted, but the fact remains that the agriculture is the state subject, and what gave the power to the parliament to legislate on a subject which is clearly listed in agriculture. But how did they do? They use the subtleties of the Constitution. Somewhere it says trade in foodstuffs, so that is used to enact these farm laws. I'll give you another example. The Ministry of Cooperatives was created at the Government of India. So cooperation is a part of the state subject. Can Telangana government create a Ministry of Defense? Can Telangana government create a Ministry of External Affairs? Can Telangana government create something which is in the domain of the central union government? But unfortunately, the parliament enacts laws on subjects which are in the state list. Well, of course, if it is in the union, the concurrent list, they will jolly well do it. Education is in the concurrent list, and the new education policy was thrust upon the nation unilaterally by the union government without even federal consultation. So this is I gave you a couple of examples how the legislative powers of the states have been encroached upon by the centralizing tendencies of the union government. Is this not a threat to the constitution? Is it not a threat to the Indian federalism? I'll give you the second point. Well, not just the legislative powers, the administrative powers of states are encroached upon. The classic illustration is amendment to the rules governing the Indian administrative services. Well, though Indian administrative services officers belong to the All India services, but they are posted at the respective states. They in reality function for the state government, though the idea was to create an All India service free from the local influences. But today the rules of deputation of the All India services are amended so that the states will not have any say, and the union government can, without even the consent of the state government, can take away the IAS officers from the state to the center. So can anybody accept this kind of a direct assault on the attack and affront on the powers of the states? Then the third example is the cultural pluralism. The Vice Chancellor of the National Law School was talking about cultural pluralism also. What does it mean by the cultural pluralism? The language spoken, I come from a very remote district. So when states lost revenues during the GST, today the GST compensation Act comes to the end in 2022. States are demanding that the GST Compensation Act should be extended for another 5 years. The union government refuses. The GST compensation dues are not paid in time. There are always arrears. You will be surprised to know that in 2018-19, I am quoting the report of the Comptroller and Auditor General CAG. In CAG report of 2018-19 says, the union government wrongfully retained 47,272 crores from the GST compensation cesspool, which was otherwise should be transferred to states. Do you know what the government of India did? There is a GST compensation act. The government of India doesn't compensate to the states. The reality is, it is not the government of India that compensates. That there is a GST compensation special cess levied on certain sin products, and thus accumulated revenues will be used to compensate the states. There in 2018-19, before the pandemic, the accruals to the GST compensation fund was over 47,000 crores over and above what was required to compensate the states. The union government simply retained it, though this money doesn't belong to the union government at all. And it is the CAG that found fault with that. When there were excess revenue in the fund, union government has retained it. When there is a shortfall in the fund, finance minister says, I can't give it to the states because it is an act of God. So when the funds shortfall, it is act of God. Fund surplus, it is not act of God. See the kind of logic, bizarre logic that is played upon by the union government. And after the dismantling of the planning commission, funds earmarked for the new projects are today completely in the disposal of the union finance ministry. I can give you a number of such examples. The finance commission, one of the indicators, one of the criteria for allocating resources by the finance commission is the population. Well, the population data was frozen both for finance commission, the delimitation of consciences at 1971. Because, and now the government of India has revised this, and now 2011 is taken for finance commission. What will happen? Tomorrow, even for delimitation, it will happen. The constituencies, number of constituencies in UP and Bihar will increase. Telangana and Andhra will come down. The resources for South Indian states have sharply come down when the population basis was changed from 71 to 2011, precisely because we have done well with the family planning, and the UP wala and Bihari wala did not do well with the family planning. So the South Indian states are today punished by the union government for controlling the population. Normally you incentivize for controlling the population, but the policies of the government of India are essentially punishing especially the South Indian states and a couple of other states, for effectively implementing the family planning programs. So I have given you several ways. I'll give you one more example also. The government of India enters into free trade agreements with several countries, and these free trade agreements cover number of areas which form under the legislative domain of the state government. And without any federal consultation, Government of India concludes free trade agreements which essentially tantamount to a huge loss of revenue due to these free trade agreements, because free trade agreements essentially mean tax concessions. And states are not even consulted for this purpose. Finally, the role of governors. Governors, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has said, governor is the representative of the constitution. But today governors are acting as representatives of the government of India. They are not agents of government of India. They are the representatives of the government of the constitution. I'm sorry to tell you, but I don't hesitate to tell from this platform, because as a teacher of the university, constitution gives me autonomy of mind and autonomy of speech. So I am constitutionally granted my autonomy of mind and free speech. Therefore, I have no hesitation to question the governor of Telangana also. Governor of Telangana reportedly says, if I have withhold the file summoning the legislature for budget session, what would have happened? The assembly would have dissolved. My simple question to the honorable governor is, if you withhold the file for 6 months, will the assembly be dissolved? Because the interim period between 2 sessions should not be more than 6 months. If some maverick governor withhold the file for summoning the legislature for 6 months, will the assembly fall? That will never fall. If our Vice Chancellor says, if I don't sign your file, what will happen? We will remove you and keep somebody else to sign the file. Simple as that. So any person, our Vice Chancellor will never say that, but I'm telling you, the people in the constitutional offices are expected to discharge the powers which they have, which the Constitution bestows on them in the best traditions of the Constitution only. I'm just quoting a Supreme Court judgment. The people, the persons occupying the constitutional offices should discharge the powers Constitution bestows on them only in a constitutionally befitting manner. Well, I am not defending the denial of a protocol to her, but that doesn't justify the statement that I will bring down if I really wanted, I would have brought down the assembly and the government. With due respect to the institution of governor, with due regard to the gubernatorial office, let me tell you, if the people of Telangana have elected the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers, people of Telangana alone will have a right to remove them. Nobody else, no nominated person of the government of India will ever have the power to remove an elected government, because it is as simple as that. Elected government is accountable to the people every 5 years, but a nominated institution will never be accountable. But what we are witnessing in West Bengal, Kerala, Pondicherry, finally several laws are amended which clearly stifle the powers of states. Look at the Ports Amendment Bill. It says all the smaller ports which are hitherto under the state domain will go to the union government. Look at the Dam Safety Bill. The dam supervision will be taken over by the government of India in the name of safety. Look at the RTI Amendment Act. The state government will not have any powers in the service conditions of information commissioners. Look at government of the National Capital Territory of Delhi Bill. The Chief Minister, the word Chief Minister is replaced by Governor. So kind of laws which are coming, Indian Marine Fisheries Law. I can quote number of Electricity Act. Electricity Act clearly attacks on the rights of the states to give power subsidies to the people of that particular state. Finally, I'm sorry, I'm telling you finally third time. So finally, it is really finally. So the state governments are not even allowed to take loans. The union government can take loans left, right and center without anybody's permission. But the state governments, if they have to take loans, it has to seek the Government of India permission. Well, Government of India doesn't give the loan, for instance. Interestingly, it doesn't give loan, but it gives permission. And this permission is incumbent upon state government supposed to do something. If the Telangana government wants to take a loan from Reserve Bank of India or from a market, the Government of India says, condition 1, you have to increase the property tax. Condition 2, you have to fit the motors to the agricultural pump sets, which is very euphemistically called as power sector reforms. So the condition 3, condition 4. So to enhance the limit under the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, state governments are mandated to implement certain anti-people conditionalities to even take a loan, whereas the Government of India absolutely enjoys total freedom to raise the debt. So therefore, Indian federalism is trampled upon. It is a travesty of the Constitution. It is a dishonor to the spirit of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So as a democratic citizens of this country, as public intellectuals of this university, we need to question that anti-federal features that are creeping into the Indian polity. I once again thank the organizers and all of you for patient hearing. Thank you very much.